According to the Ministry of Construction, from late 2013 to early 2014, the real estate market saw positive signs of growing, such as increasing transaction volume, stable home prices, which differ from the continuous decline last year, and even start increasing slightly. The supporting and problem-solving policies has recently stimulated the recovery of the market, yet breaking the ice of residential field, particularly the average price segment. Both Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City markets show positive signs in early 2014, bringing business and real estate investors new hope for a new heating market this year.
Cái sản phẩm truyền thống của công ty Khang Gia là nhà chung cư cao tầng cho các đối tượng có thu nhập là trung bình khá trở lên. Thì bên cạnh đó, ngoài cái chính sách ví dụ như cái chính sách cho vay trong cái gói 30.000 tỷ, cũng như các mối quan hệ giữa chủ đầu tư với các cơ quan ngân hàng cũng ngày càng cũng được rút ngắn, xích cận là nhau, thì do đó thì cái kỳ vọng của công ty trong thời gian tới cũng rất là lớn. Hy vọng cũng sẽ đạt được nhiều cái thành quả trong cái năm mới này.
Greetings to our viewers of Sharing Vietnam on Net with VTC 10. So far, Vietnamese investors are still expecting the recovery through the signal from the real estate market in 2013. And today, we're going to have a talk with an expert with more than 10 years of experience in the real estate sector worldwide to have a closer look in this field. He will share with us his perspective on the real estate market in Vietnam and how this market can quickly recover and gain back the heat. Currently, he is the Executive Managing Director of Cushman and Wakefield, Southeast Asia. Hello, Mr. Arsh Chaudhry. Thank you for joining us today. As the Executive Managing Director of Cushman and Wakefield, how do you evaluate the Vietnam real estate market recently, especially after the first quarter of 2014?
I think the Vietnamese economy overall is certainly rebounding when you compare it to 3 years ago or 4 years ago. After the global financial crisis, economies around the world went through a very tough time. And certainly Vietnam was one of them. And because of the non-performing loans, the high inflation rates and increased interest rates, the Vietnamese economy slowed down, as many other markets across the world did as well. But certainly in the last 12 to 18 months, we've begun to see signs of improvement in the Vietnamese real estate economy, which is of course translating into the real estate sector as well. So I think first and foremost is that inflation has come down significantly. So where inflation was 24–25% a year ago, today I believe it's running at about 11–12%. Interest rates that were running in the mid-20s are now also down to the early teens as well. So these are all very positive signs, and this is translating into the real estate sector. Real estate sector, if you look at it from different asset classes between office, retail and residential, all three are performing slightly differently. The way we see it, retail is performing perhaps the best and recovering the fastest on the back of demand. So office rents, retail rents in Hanoi and in Ho Chi Minh City are improving and gathering momentum on the upward direction. Office rents, grade A, CBD office rents still are on the decline. The rate of decline has certainly reduced significantly as compared to the last few years, but we see a softening of rents over the next 12 months or so. Residential, on the other hand, the luxury sector and the low-income housing sector are the two sectors which we see a lot of improvement in. It's the middle-income sector where we see some sluggishness. But overall, I think 2014 is going to be a lot better year as compared to 2013.
Compared to other countries in Southeast Asia, what advantages do the real estate market in Vietnam have? And are there any outstanding advantages?
So if I compare the Vietnamese real estate market from an investor's point of view and how they look at Vietnam as compared to some of the other countries across Asia or specifically Southeast Asia, I think when investors come in and look at Vietnam, they're looking at it from a medium to long-term perspective. It's not so much a 12, 24, 36-month horizon. It's a 5-year horizon, it's a 10-year horizon. In some cases, it's a 15, 20-year horizon when they're looking at townships or infrastructure development. So I think that's the first thing to keep in mind. Secondly, the core fundamentals of the Vietnamese economy and the Vietnamese demography, the population base, the very young demographics are certainly going to be paying huge dividends over the next 5 to 7 years. So investors coming in will tend to benefit. In the short term, yes, there are issues. But as investors come in, and I talk to investors in Singapore, in Hong Kong, and in other parts of Asia Pacific, 3 years ago, it was very tough to sell Vietnam as an investment destination. 2 years ago, it was very tough to sell Vietnam as an investment destination. That has changed significantly over the last 12 months. People are now beginning to view investment opportunities in Vietnam. They want to consider and they want to see what are the assets, what's available, and definitely willing to take the plunge for the right kind of investment opportunity. So from our perspective, we see investments happening in the residential sector, and we see investments going into income-producing assets.
According to the first quarter 2014 final report of the real estate consulting services company Cushman and Wakefield, the office rental market in Ho Chi Minh City started gaining back the heat with the filling rate of Grade A getting 8 points up, while Grade B increased by 5 points over the same period in 2013. In Hanoi, 5 new office project B grade have entered the market, including Euro Multi-Window Complex, Tom City, Song Hong Parkville, Galaxy Tower, and PVR Building, bringing the total supply of Class B to 723,000 square meters. Grade A supply stayed unchanged from the previous quarter. In the condo market, Ho Chi Minh City with 390 apartments Class A apartment 970 from 6 a.m. to open existing projects set to be launched in this quarter. In Hanoi, investors remain cautious when launching new flash sale with only 800 units sold.
So, what are the difficulties of the Vietnam real estate at the moment?
So from a difficulty perspective, you can look at it two ways. One is the supply-demand situation. So I was talking to our teams here in Vietnam that have been operating here for the last 7 years, industry veterans, and they tell me that they have a lot of investors, both local investors and overseas investors, that want to come in and make investments. But at this point in time, the ability to access quality product that is available is fairly limited. So we haven't seen sellers come in and step up. So say, for example, somebody who owns an office building to come in and look to make an investment. But certainly there are a lot of investors out there that are willing to now come in and make the investment. So I think there's a bit of a gap between bid and ask. And I think that gap will narrow. And as that gap narrows over the next 6 to 12 months or so, you're going to see a lot more transactions beginning to take place. I think the other difficulty is more on the policy side, and people wanting to come in to invest into Vietnam. They want stability. They want stability in terms of policies of the government, and they want stability in the FX rate, and they want stability in the government in itself. So if you look at, say, Southeast Asia, Indonesia is going through elections right now, and that election process is going to take place for the next 6 months or so. So there's instability, and people are in a wait and watch mode. Similarly, in the Philippines, in 18 months' time, elections are going to come up. So already people are beginning to be a bit more cautious about what the next government's going to do. That issue is not something that comes into play here in Vietnam. There's government stability. I think the second thing is the foreign exchange, the exchange rate fluctuations. Now, I remember when we set up business here in Vietnam in 2007, the dong to the dollar at that point in time was about 16,200. And over 4 years or so, it went up to about 21,500 or so. But in the last 12 to 18 months, the dong has remained fairly strong and has been one of the few currencies in the world that has stayed and maintained its position against the dollar. So that stability and that confidence on the dong and the currency, so that you don't lose money bringing money into the country or taking it out, I think is also a big plus from a foreign investor perspective.
With such difficulties, what do Vietnamese investors, corporates, as well as government officials need to do in order to better the real estate market situation?
I think the first and foremost is the reduction in interest rates has already helped to a significant extent. I think that was a big positive. The creation of the Vietnamese Asset Management Company, the VAMC, and the push from the government to the banks to clear out the NPLs, that's a positive direction as well. I think that needs to gather more momentum, however. I don't think much has happened on the NPL side and offloading of some of those assets yet. And I think once the banks clear their non-performing loans, I think that'll help the banking system a lot more in terms of creating more avenues to lend and investors having more confidence in the economy. So I think that's one. The other thing is leasehold. So investors coming in get only leasehold interest up to a maximum of 50 years. They don't get freehold interest. And a lease top-up or a lease renewal beyond the 50 years is something that is not yet tested. So it always remains a question mark for somebody coming in to make an investment as to what's going to happen once you hit the 50-year mark. So if the government can look to address that, I think that also will get a lot more investor confidence back.
After the final report of the first quarter in 2014, how do you forecast about the real estate market in Vietnam this year?
From an economic perspective, all the economic indicators are pointing in the right direction. Inflation is coming down, interest rates are coming down. The government is pushing the banks to start increasing lending, which are all positive signs. From a real estate perspective, if you look at the office sector and grade A CBD rents, we believe will continue to soften moderately over the next 9 months or so. So we see 2014 office rents to remain soft. And as I mentioned, residential, we see demand on the luxury sector, and we see demand in the middle income sector, in the lower income sector. The middle income sector will, I think, has yet to pick up, but with reduction in interest rates and confidence coming back, I think that is something that we'll probably begin to see at the end of the year as well.
So, after the first quarter, what is the strategy of foreign corporates, investors who are investing in the real estate market in Vietnam?
When investors come in and invest in real estate, unlike the stock market where you take short-term or medium-term views, investments into real estate tend to be more medium to long-term. So investors don't necessarily tend to trade in and out of real estate assets as quickly as they would in stocks and bonds. Investments tend to be, over a 5-year, 10-year, or a longer time horizon. So investors don't really tend to change their strategies on a quarter-on-quarter basis. But having said that, the last 2 quarters, from an economic data perspective, have been very strong, and they've been pointing towards an upward trend in the economy coming back. So if anything, I think it's bringing investor confidence back. I don't see a change in strategy. I think I see more positive momentum being built.
Thank you for your sharing.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the conversation with Mr. Arsh Chaudhry has brought to a new light about the real estate market in Vietnam. Hope that the experience that he shared today will help the Vietnamese corporates, investors, and government officials recognize the problem and come up with more effective policies so that the real estate market can overcome the current difficulties and have more positive signs during this year. Sharing Vietnam has now come to an end. Thank you for watching. Goodbye and see you later.